Welcome back to BuildBytesDaily. Last time we chatted, we looked at the future of rendering in Next.js. Today, we're going even deeper. We're going to master a super powerful new tool for your performance toolkit, the use cache directive. So here's what's on deck. We'll kick things off by connecting the dots from our last discussion on streaming. It all ties together, you'll see. Then we'll properly introduce use cache, get into the nitty-gritty of how to handle function arguments with it, and finally, learn how to take total control of your cache with tagging and revalidation. By the end, you'll have everything you need. All right, let's kick things off. In our last explainer, we were all about making UIs feel super dynamic and instant. Now we're going to flip the script a bit and shift our focus from the front-end UI to the back-end data, and see how we can make that just as efficient. So just as a quick refresher, partial pre-rendering is an absolute game changer. It lets Next.js send the static, non-changing parts of your page right away, while the dynamic pieces, the parts that need to fetch some data, just stream in as soon as they're ready. The beautiful part is it all happens in one single HTTP request, which just crushes load times. This brings up a really crucial question, right? Streaming is perfect for content that's unique to a user or changes all the time. But what about the other side of that coin? What do we do with data that's shared by everyone, or computations that are really expensive to run but don't change very often? Redoing all that work on every single request would be, well, just a massive waste. And that is exactly where our star for today comes in, the use cache directive. This is Next.js's incredibly elegant solution for memalizing, which is just a fancy word for remembering the results of functions so you don't have to do the heavy lifting over and over and over again. It's honestly dead simple. When you add use cache to a function, you're just telling Next.js, hey, the first time you run this, save the result. For any other request that comes in looking for the same thing, just hand them the save copy. It's a really straightforward and powerful way to make your app faster. And using it is ridiculously easy. You've got two main controls here. First, you just add the use cache directive at the top. Boom, you've opted in. Second, and this is optional, you can define a cacheLife, telling Next.js exactly how long it should hold on to that data before it decides it's stale and needs to be fetched again. It gives you really fine-grained control. Of course, with great power comes a few important rules. It's not a total free-for-all. When we start passing arguments to our cached functions, we have to be a little careful because Next.js needs a foolproof way to know if two function calls are actually the same. Let's see how that works. Okay, here's the number one most important rule. Any arguments you pass to a cached function must be serializable. All that means is they have to be simple enough for Next.js to convert them into a string. That string acts like a unique key or a fingerprint for the cache. If the arguments are too complex, they can't be fingerprinted and the cache just won't work right. This slide breaks it down perfectly. On the left, you've got the stuff that's good to go. Simple things like strings, numbers, plain old JavaScript objects, and arrays. Easy. On the right, you've got the tricky types you need to watch out for. Things like functions, class instances, and yep, even React components themselves. So this leads to a super common scenario, right? What if you want to create a cached wrapper component? Like a layout component that fetches some data, but also needs to accept other components as its children prop. Since React components aren't serializable, how in the world do we solve this puzzle? The solution is actually pretty clever. You can accept these complex, unserializable values as long as you promise not to look inside them. Think of it like this. You're being handed a sealed box. You can't open it or analyze what's inside, but you can perform your cached operations around it and then just pass that sealed box straight through to the output. As long as you don't introspect it, Next.js is cool with it. Okay, so we know how to cache our data. But what happens when that data changes in our database or CMS? We can't just sit around and wait for the cache lifetime to expire. We need a way to proactively manage our cache, and that's where tagging comes in to save the day. Think of cacheTag as putting a digital sticky note on your cache data. You might fetch a list of blog posts and tag it with posts. Or maybe you fetch a user's shopping cart and tag it with cart. This gives you an incredibly powerful and granular way to group related cached items so you can manage them all at once. So the logical next question is, once we've tagged our data, how do we tell Next.js, hey, everything with the posts tag is now old news, you need to get rid of it? Well, Next.js gives us two distinct strategies for this, and choosing the right one really depends on what your app needs. The two tools we have are updateTag and revalidateTag. UpdateTag is for when you absolutely need immediate consistency. It invalidates the old data and forces a refresh right then and there, all within the same request. revalidateTag, on the other hand, is for eventual consistency. It marks the data as stale, serves the old version one last time, and then triggers a revalidation in the background. It's a classic trade-off between instant freshness and optimal performance.
A shopping cart is the perfect example for updateTag. When a user removes an item, they need to see that change reflected instantly. You can't show them the old card. That would be a terrible user experience. So by tagging the cart data and using updateTag whenever it's modified, you guarantee the user always sees the latest, most accurate information. Now, compare that to a blog feed. When a new post is published, it's not absolutely critical for every single user to see it that exact second. So here, you can use revalidateTag. You serve the existing cached page instantly, which is super fast, while a fresh version gets generated in the background for the next visitor. This is that classic stale while revalidate approach, and it's fantastic for content-heavy sites.
Whew, okay. We have covered a ton of ground, from the very basics of usecache to the more advanced nuances of revalidation. Let's condense all of that down into a quick reference toolkit that you can take with you. So here are the key takeaways. Use usecache for any data that isn't hyperdynamic. Always, always remember that your arguments have to be serializable. Use that clever pass-through pattern for tricky props like children. Organize your cache by using cacheTag. And finally, choose your revalidation strategy wisely. UpdateTag when you need it now, and revalidateTag when soon is good enough. And that really brings us to the end of our deep dive. You are now armed with a seriously powerful set of tools to build Next.js apps that aren't just dynamic, but are also incredibly performant. The real question now is, as you look at your own projects, where's the biggest opportunity? Where can you apply these strategies to get a massive performance win right now? Thanks so much for joining me for this deep dive. If you found this valuable, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. And be sure to subscribe to BuildBytesDaily for more. We'll see you in the next one.